Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this session. We are so excited to dive into culture-driven startup success strategies for small and remote teams. My name is Selena Aponte, and I'm VP of Strategy and Development here at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, we're a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you'll see in the chat in a moment, the Nasdaq Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs of all backgrounds. Be sure to check out our links and resources in chat. Couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Firstly, let us know where you're dialing in from chat. We love to hear from you. We will open for a live Q&A at the end of the event, so please, as questions pop up during this discussion, please pop them into chat and know that we will get to them later. And what I'd love to take a moment and just pause and reflect and say is nothing we could do at the center is without the amazing, incredible support of all of our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Wells Fargo Foundation, the Nareet Foundation, Walmart Foundation, JP Morgan Chase, BPM, HubSpot for Startups, and Google Cloud. We're humbled by their contributions and are excited to share their incredible knowledge and wisdom with you all as we continue to really solve your most pressing challenges and help you leave this call today with a greater understanding of strategies, ideas, action items that you would like to pursue as you're thinking about culture, as you're thinking about growth within your startup. So before we get started, I'm going to launch a few polls to just sort of take a temperature and gauge on where we are all doing today. So we use this information as a guide to the wellness programs we provide for our global community of entrepreneurs. So Michelle, will you go ahead and launch the polls? So how are you feeling today in this moment? Wonderful. So balance of optimism, balance of anxious and surviving. We appreciate all of this. All right, next question. This helps us design classes and courses and resources. So we want to know what's keeping you up at night. Super helpful. We see a lot of finance, a lot of sales, a lot of marketing, a lot of scale. The perfect context for this conversation as well as we really think about culture as an asset and culture as a strategy to hitting some of these goals across of these different disciplines. All right. Michelle, are we ready to get started?
We are all ready.
All right. Well, without further ado, I'm very excited about our special guest today. And I've gotten to spend a little bit of time with him, getting to know a little bit more his story, his approach, his strategy, and it's been a gift. And so I have tons of questions. I know you all will have lots of questions as we dive in deeper, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So we are delighted to welcome Richard Taylor. He's the SVP of People Experience at Nasdaq to this webinar session today. His expertise is really building and measurably transforming culture. This includes company values, employee engagement, leadership, and building high-functioning talent engine across all career stages, communications, office experience, remote office experience, and really thinking about your brand as an employer. One of Nasdaq's most senior executives, he is also co-sponsor of ERGs, the Out and Proud Employees of Nasdaq, and a community leader. He's held HR leadership roles across tech companies, including Palo Alto Networks, LinkedIn, Applied Materials, Reuters. So he has a really inside view on these large-scale tech companies, but also what are the ingredients and the journey to get to this as a destination for so many of you. And he's got experience working across US and Europe and Asia. I know we've got entrepreneurs from all over the world. So if you're in any of those markets, please share in chat where you're coming from. And we're excited to sort of integrate that international perspective as well. Really interesting, and I can't wait to ask you some questions on this. Your background is in philosophy and religion, and you have a Master's of Divinity from Harvard University and nearly finished a PhD in Buddhism and Indian Studies at UC Berkeley. So we're going to ask you some questions around that. But before we get started, this is a question we'd like to ask so many of our entrepreneurs. But out of everything in the world you could be doing with your time and talent, why this role and why this career? What has brought you here?
Honestly, Selena, it's not something I think I planned. I've landed here as so many people do in the people space, the HR space. But looking back on what the career has meant to me and why I love it and why I stay is that I really want to help humanize work, whether it's big corporations or small organizations or nonprofit or NGOs. So often the organization is rightly very focused on their KPIs, their goals, their growth targets. Great. Healthy organizations, are financially sound and have good organization. But I think we often overlook the people element. And I love what I do. My role is called People Experience. And my whole job is to spend my waking hours thinking about what makes a great employee experience. And everywhere I've worked, including now at Nasdaq, people quickly get to figure out that I'm actually sincere. Like, I'm here for you, Selena, or whoever it may be. How can I help you have an awesome experience? And when it's not awesome, which happens unfortunately sometimes, what can we do about that, right? So I think of it as like a customer experience role, but my customers are the employees, and they quickly come to believe and trust that I'm sincere, I mean it, and I want to hear your problems because maybe I can help. And if not, I probably know the guy or the gal who can help. And that just really lights my fire.
Amazing. Well, we've got some good engagement on chat. So I'm just going to invite people, the problem that you're looking to solve that you would love to pick Richard's brain on, drop some questions in chat. We've got people coming from Atlanta. We've got people here from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We've got people here, go Lehigh. We've got people here from working in Japan and Asia. So Memphis, Tennessee, wonderful. So yes, what's in this domain of people experience, what design questions do you have for Richard? What is top of mind that invited you to join this call today and got you here? Okay, so we'll get that conversation going. I have to, before we go any further, I just have to ask you about your background in religious studies and how I mentioned you have a Master of Divinity from Harvard, and you've obviously studied Buddhism and Indian studies. How can you share a little bit what your interest in that area is, and maybe even how that background has served you or taken you and influenced the technology work you do today around people and culture?
I'll do my best, Selena. Again, kind of not the most planful. I'm always amazed when I meet like 12-year-olds or 18-year-olds. They know exactly what they want to do with their lives. And I'm like, I don't know how you're doing this, but good for you. I, from an early age, had big questions, just big questions about like, how old is the universe and how big is it and what are we doing here? And initially, as an undergrad, I was a physics major. And any of you who have studied physics, you know what I didn't know at first. The math quickly gets completely out of control. I'm doing multivariable calc, barely. I'm doing matrices. I'm sweating bullets to get a C plus, and my co-students are like not cracking the book and they're getting straight A's. And I'm like, clearly this is not my domain, but I have big questions. And so honestly, I found it easier in philosophy and religious studies to ask big questions. And in that process, I got deeply involved in just the history of humanity. And I don't mean just, Western, like Eastern humanity, African humanity, all around the world, humans have a deep, deep, long history where we've all asked the big questions. And I got more and more intrigued in that. And I got more and more drawn into particularly history of religion, comparative religion, early Christianity and early Buddhism was my master's thesis. And then I got more drawn into India, and in the process, had to learn a lot of languages, including Sanskrit, which if you haven't tried, is really hard. Like Sanskrit's really complicated, and I really had to focus on that. How has it served me in my career? One is it's made me really appreciate that as an obviously white guy from San Diego, not all the world looks like me, thinks like me, values what I value. Humans really are, we have a lot in common, right? But we are also wired differently, like right and left-handed. It's like we're wired that way. And I've really come to appreciate the differences people bring to the workplace, to the organization, and how incumbent it is on me as a leader to really listen. I shouldn't assume, oh, I know the answer to that. Maybe I don't, or maybe she's not asking the question I think that she's asking. And I need to really listen to what she's actually asking. And I don't have the answer, but maybe we can co-create it together. So getting exposed to that rich tapestry of human history just made me more appreciative, more humble, more thoughtful about my limited perspective on the world versus like all the perspectives that are out there. I don't know if that's helpful.
That's super helpful. And I think that resonates a lot with entrepreneurs. Every entrepreneur I met, it doesn't seem like it's a linear path. So feel free to share anyone that's had creative backgrounds or creative inroads to entrepreneurship or how you've landed in entrepreneurship. Please go ahead and share a little bit of your background. Um, Next up, this is a burning question, and I think the context of what brings us together. And it's really how to hire the right employees. And what I'd love to have you do is think about that in terms of managing interns. I think some of you are participants in our startup intern match program and are working and managing interns for the first time. And then also how you think about that intern piece as the same or different or ingredients to, those early first time hires, but really that right talent question that I think keeps so many entrepreneurs up at night with their we have limited resources. How do you make good decisions there?
Right. I think it's a really important question around hiring the right talent. I saw a couple of the comments in chat about like early talent, the early days of a startup, like those first few hires are really key, right? I have maybe a non-traditional philosophy about hiring, but it may seem more traditional when we start with interns because interns are the perfect case study for what I'm about to share. Interns come in, let's be really brutally honest, with almost no skills. Tons of potential, tons of IQ, hopefully some EQ as well, right? But we have these bright young adults, usually young, who have tons and tons of energy and potential to do things. But honestly, I've worked with interns for many, many, many years. They're very eager and they actually don't know much yet. They may have a lot of academic training, right, which is great. And they may have a little bit of incipient or early exposure to some scientific discipline or philosophical or sociological, all good stuff. But interns don't come to the job often with a ton of depth and skills. I mean, the joke I've seen is like companies that post entry-level roles and they want 5 years of experience in this and 3 years of experience in that. And you're like, wait, this is entry level. How are these people supposed to have 5 years of experience? Interns are a perfect case study because we know they don't have a lot of skills yet. They will. But this is the illustrating the point I want to make. I really think we should hire for attitude and for aptitude. You can train almost any skill. And yes, some people have more talent for certain skills like music or sports or science, whatever it may be, but you can train most things if the person is interested, if they want to, etc. I've worked in startups myself, not as a founder, but as one of the early hires. And I think we all understand startups are fierce. You're moving fast, it's intense, and you're often having to pivot really quickly. If you hire somebody who's brittle, who needs things just so, like if you move my coffee mug 6 inches and that's a problem, I'm like, oh, you're going to have a hard time with the roller coaster we're about to ride on. And so I think it's really important as we look at our interns to interview more for their values, how they think about the value of their work, what they want to do in the world, what makes them happy at work, because you can probably quickly figure out, oh, this person's not going to be happy here. They're a great person, but they won't be happy here. And if I hire them, it's not a great fit for them, and it's also going to not be a great fit for us. And I believe that actually is my talent philosophy in general. As much as you can, hire for attitude, hire for aptitude. Is this person a go-getter who is a good listener, has a good deal of humility, who's willing to learn, collaborative? That's really hard to train. It's really hard to train a jerk to listen and to be collaborative. Somebody who may have zero skills, but is a great listener, a quick study, and wants to work with their peers, they're going to lean in and help you build. So it's really easy comparatively to train for skills. Here's this process. Here's how we approach a sales call. Here's how we look at coding. It's really hard to train why you're kind of a jerk and why it's not going to work out. Like you can talk at them all day, but sometimes this fixed mindset is a problem. And the growth mindset is, I'm not perfect today, but I'm going to learn. And those people tend to do really well, particularly in the really dynamic early days of a startup. That's not just interns. I think that's for everybody. I try to hire, when I'm looking at CEO candidates, I do succession planning for my company and my board, along with my CEO. We think about which CEO is going to be the most able to adapt to our environment, the most quick on their feet, the most willing to listen to the leadership team around them, which my CEO is amazing at, right? So it's true, I think, from interns all the way up to senior CEOs at big companies, that attitude and that aptitude.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's push this a little bit further because I think you're
Yeah.
actually addressing a lot of the questions that we've prepared and integrating. So Veronica's asking, as an entrepreneur, how do you prioritize? So that's really thoughtful in terms of your intern approach and making that right fit. Can you just walk us through how do you prioritize what roles to hire first, and how do you think about that right combination of who those people are, full-time, contractors, and like walk us to that next phase? We've covered intern. What's the next phase as you see it?
I think it's going to depend a little bit. People probably hate this answer, but it depends. Like, what is your business model? Are you largely aiming at a retail audience? Marketing will be huge, right? Is it largely a software as a service product or an app? You're going to need some core engineering. But no matter what role you're hiring, you have to think about your growth trajectory. Which kind of roles will get you to that early stage growth or even getting early funding, right? How are you going to show up, as it were, to investors buttoned up, which may be a very American phrase, but like showing up ready to do business, showing up looking professional, sounding professional, having polished presentations. I think all founders know this, but often founders, I think, carry the burden on their own shoulders. And the whole point of having a team, particularly your early leadership team, is that they're going to share the burden. Do you have anybody who can help you with those slides, help you think about your roadmap, help you think about your target audience? I've been in startups where we actually kind of sold vaporware. It was a software company, but the software didn't exist yet. We needed the funding of the early sales to actually fund our ability to build the product that we claim to sell, which borderline integrity, maybe we could talk about that, but we knew we could build it if we had the funding. We had to have people who were really, really good in front of customers, the gift of talk, the gift of presentation and clarity to make a compelling case why you should buy our almost existing, but not quite yet existing product. And then we're going to go build it with the funding you just gave us. So it really depends on the kind of organization you're running. What is your growth plan? What is your product or your service? And who's going to help you share that burden? Because I think founders carry enormous weight on their backs and they bring it home to their families and it affects their sleep and their health. Those first few hires should be helping you. If you're carrying them, I'm concerned. If they're helping you carry the load of the organization, that's a great hire. And yes, we did get the funding to build the vaporware company. The company existed, the products didn't always, but we got the funding to go build it. But there were weeks where we're like, will we make payroll next month? We're not sure. It's going to be a little touch and go. And then we would make the sale. And luckily we'd sold them on a 12-month, 12-month roadmap. So we're going to be building the product, but you won't get delivery for 12 months. Thank God, because we needed 12 months to build that puppy. But it worked. We worked. We got acquired. Around 500 people. We got acquired by Reuters and became a success story.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to preview a little bit of research that we're doing at the center that hasn't yet been published, but is hyper relevant to this conversation. So we interviewed women business owners looking at success from a revenue perspective, and we found sub $500,000 in revenue. It was critical milestones. And it was critical hitting business milestones, whereas above $500,000 in revenue, it became much more about vision as the priority. So Rich, that super speaks to what you just said is, what are those critical at the early stages, right? What are those critical milestones you need to hit for your business, and who is best poised? So I just had to preview that little nugget in support. We've got lots of questions here. Rich, if you're okay, I'm going to sort of field the questions into the topic and
Go
then
for it.
on to the other agenda items. So coming up, let's stay here because we've got a lot of engagement around hiring and this right combination. And then coming up, we've got questions teed up around remote working, small office culture. So know that that's coming, but let's stick with this. So Lisa, actually, one of our milestone maker alums and just wonderful entrepreneur, delighted to see you here. I'm giving you a big wave. Has a question that's specific, but I think something that a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to pretty strongly at these earliest stages. And it's having an employee that's very rigid. And so, Lisa, you're on camera. Do you want to quickly ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So, I hear what you're saying, Rich, about like if someone's kind of rigid and, they have to operate a certain way, that's probably not a good employee for you as a startup because you're trying to move fast. And when I ran into this situation, I wanted to terminate the employee because I'm like, oh, this is just too much and I'm trying to move. And then one of my advisors says, well, Celisa, you need all kind of people. This person is really good at being methodical and getting things done. You give a task, like with that structure, they get what you've asked them to do done and they do it with excellence. So they're like, you need to bend a little bit and just adjust to these styles. But this person will like say things like, well, I've worked 7.052 hours today and I only have, point da 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 left to go. And I'm like, oh my God, like you're an exempt employee. Like how do you, like, that's just crazy. So I'm just trying to understand like recommendations, suggestions, because it blows my mind that I have to deal with that.
Yeah. How many in chat, how many people have had this similar experience? Like, feel free to share, but I know that you're not alone in this. So Lisa, back to humans, right? And all the complexity that humans bring from the history of time, Rich.
Well, I don't want to preempt the questions. And also, so Lisa, with all respect, you know your business better than I do. So I'm in no position to tell you what your organization needs or doesn't need. You probably know a lot more about that than I do. I will share that I've worked in software, various kinds of software, most of my career, and I've come across many people who are on the autism spectrum. And so it is a neurodivergence, and I'm a very inclusive leader. And I would say if this person is in fact helping you achieve your organization's goals, and they add more value than take away your time, which is a value suck, right? If they're actually helping you achieve your roadmap, great. There may be roles that they're more suitable for, and there may be roles that are not. Maybe they're an amazing software developer, and you need to get some software out the front door pronto. Great. Maybe they're not the most impressive people to put in front of customers, unless it's techies talking to techies, in which case it might be great, right? But yes, I know this exempt thing is kind of a US category and other countries may not have this, but in the US, most professional roles are exempt, meaning they're not hourly. They don't fill out time cards. They don't get paid by the hour. They're paid a salary, which is usually every 2 weeks or once a month you get a paycheck and you do whatever needs doing. It does not mean you have to work 24/7. This is not, prison or jail. Like we're trying to have work-life balance, but startups are intense. And my worry for founders like you, Lisa, is if this person is putting up lots of barriers and obstacles, what does that do for you? Is that shifting the burden back to you? Because I'm going to assume you're the boss here and you're hiring employees to help you, AKA the boss, get stuff done, probably in a very short time frame. So I would question, are they adding more value than they're taking? And it's a real heart to heart. There may be roles where they're better suited. It may not be your organization, and that's okay. If they're really talented, they're going to land somewhere good. But like these are really hard. As an HR guy, it's hard. I've had to let people go on my own team as well as help other senior leaders let people go on their team. It sucks. I'll quote my CEO, you lose a little bit of your soul every time. Like if this is easy, I'm a little worried about your character, right? This should not be an easy decision, but sometimes it's the right decision. And I've also learned, so at least it's just my experience, take it for what it's worth. If you've made a decision, the sooner you act, the better. Because the longer it goes on, the worse
Yeah.
that spool of yarn unravels. If you've come to a decision, hand on heart, I would act swiftly and as compassionately as you can. But time's a wasting, and your time is not unlimited, right?
Oh,
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thank you very much for that. Was
Yeah.
helpful.
Exactly. A pretty smart person, so I'm going to trust your judgment, but
Yeah.
those are my 2 cents.
We always say that at the center, the entrepreneurs know, and our job is to just give you some information to help that inner knowing be even clearer. So thank
And
you.
this people stuff is tricky. It's subtle. It's not always clear, black and white. Like it's not always clear. What's the clear? It's a lot of gray.
So we've got another great follow-up question to this from Jarina, who wants to know, does this apply to interns? She's facing a similar situation, similar issue, and wants to know in the internship context, which is shorter, obviously, and
Right.
a different design. How would you approach that?
But particularly in smaller, earlier stage organizations, every hire matters. Even if it's a 2 or 3 month intern, that's a quarter of a year. And if you're measuring your startup in like quarters, that's a whole quarter. I would not give anything away. I would make everybody work for their spot. And in many states in the US anyway, interns are paid, so they are actually employees. In California, for sure, it's required to pay your employee. I don't know all 50 states and all the countries of the world, but interns are workers, even if they're volunteer. So I would say I'm a pretty rigorous hirer, and I don't always trust my own instincts, believe it or not. So I put together an interview team. Could be 2 people, could be 4 people. I'm skeptical of companies that have you interview with 82 people and it takes 8 weeks because like the world moves fast. So like 2, 3, 4 interviewers, great. And I've also learned to ask my interviewers, and they're one by one, please ask the same questions in the same order. Because conversations can kind of wander, and she's talking about her kids, and he's talking about his vacation. And I'm like, cool, cool, cool. On the job content, like, where are we at, right? So I try to have the same interviewers in the same order. Like you'd meet with her first, and then him, and then her, and then him, and they ask the same questions in the same order. You can really compare, as we say, apples to apples. This intern answered these questions this way. This intern answered these questions this way. And then I really listen to my interview panel. We'll meet afterwards, the four of us or so, and I go last. And I say, hey, Selena, what did you ask and what did they answer? And who impressed you the most? Hey, John. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Lisa. What did you ask? How did they answer? What impressed you the most? If the hiring manager speaks first, you've kind of told the rest of the room what you think, whereas you're actually trying to get opinions that may not be the same as your own. I've actually not hired somebody I really, really liked because my interview panel was like, red flags, do not hire that person. And I'm like, oh, I thought they were great. Well, she shared this. And I was like, oh, I see your point. So I listened to my interview team and I treat interns like a regular employee. And the last tip I'll say, because I know time is short, I really use that situational interviewing technique, but I don't ask hypothetical. Anybody can tell a wonderful story full of puppies and rainbows and unicorns. I ask, has this ever happened to you? Situation XYZ, what did you do? What did you do when a project went off the rails? What did you do when you worked for several days in a row, made a presentation, and the room was not impressed and declined your proposition? What did you do? Da, 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 da. And I ask questions, not random questions like I've heard software companies ask, like, how many quarters can fit into a 757? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. I don't know the answer. I want to know attitude and aptitude. So in this situation, in this one, what happened? How did you handle it? And I'm looking for agility. I'm looking for resilience. I'm looking for flexibility. I'm looking for collaboration. I'm looking for kindness, frankly. And I find that history is a better predictor than what you might do in this magical made up situation. What actually happened? What did you actually do?
Abby, Katie, I'm going to move on from interviewing questions. That was wonderful, Rich. But if we're missing any or you have follow-on questions, please drop it in chat. So let's move on a little bit and talk about company culture and
Mm,
working in small and remote offices. And can you just give us a little bit of guide on, again, in getting to this place where your talent is performing at its optimal capacity, recognizing that time is a diminishing resource and also probably the biggest resource you have?
Yeah.
What's most important? How do you design for that?
Whether you're small or remote or small and remote, and Nasdaq has quite a few people, even though we're a pretty sizable global company with thousands, many people work from home full time, or the manager is in Stockholm and the employee is in Bangalore, or the manager is in Japan and the employee is in Dubai. We have a lot of this too, even at our scale. It's really, really important people are aligned, top of the house to the most junior person, around purpose. What are we here to do? We all have our job descriptions. I have mine. Selena has hers. Great, great, great. But higher level, are we focusing on this product line? Are we focusing on growth? Are we focusing on this customer segment? Are we solving a very particular problem? Like we're releasing product that has too many bugs. We're gonna fix that problem. People need regular check-ins on what's the big picture, and then my role, whether it's big or small, how does my role help deliver on that? And particularly for a smaller company, this should not be hard. It's harder for NASDAQ with 10,000 people and so many different roles. How do we all roll up to the big things this year? That smaller companies, that should be pretty straightforward. We're focusing this quarter on breaking into the Canadian market or rolling out this new functionality that's a really core part of our growth strategy. Everyone should know that. They shouldn't be reading it on email. It should be in every town hall, in every meeting, every manager one-on-one. People should be aligned around our big focus right now. It's great to have a 10-year roadmap, but this quarter, what's our focus? Because humans are intelligent and they will prioritize. I could answer all of these emails, or I could focus on the big thing and get to emails when I have a moment later, right? So you want people focusing on the most important thing, and your leadership have to be aligned as well. If the founder or CEO is the only one saying this and nobody else is repeating you, it's a problem. You can't be the only voice who's guiding. I would also say in building culture, it's really important people understand how to operate. And I'll give you a really specific example. Where can they find information? Do you have an intranet? Is there a shared set of folders where the files live? Because people will waste time when they're remote, thrashing around, asking their friend, they're on Teams. I don't know. Ask the IT guy. The IT guy's out today. Ask the marketing team. The marketing team's on the road. They're doing a road show. Like, how do I get answers really, really quickly? And that's important when you have 2 employees, but it's more important when you have 10, 20, 30. It gets exponentially more complex to find things. And the last thing I'd say is that it's really important you use your real estate. I'm using my real estate today. I have my lanyard. That's real estate that says NASDAQ on it. I've got my real estate here. We're running a campaign at NASDAQ. We've had some major acquisitions, and they're all coming from different kinds of cultures, but the campaign is one NASDAQ. We're all here as one brand, one stock price. That's my campaign. Yours may be different. I'm trying in everything I do, every meeting, to use my real estate, whether it's my lanyard, my Zoom screen, to reinforce messages. I have my own, like I had a design team design this color scheme, blah, 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 blah. And I reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. It's helpful to have a brand and use your real estate. If you've got video screens in the office, use your video screens. If you've got wall space, put stuff up on the walls. If you've got 5 minutes on your agenda for every team meeting, reinforce your values and your culture in the beginning of every meeting again and again. When people start to get sick of it, then you know you've achieved liftoff, right? Saying it 8 times may not be enough.
Super helpful. So this is related to a question that Arnita is asking. How do you approach the competitive advantage as you think about talent and people as your ingredient set?
I think that's a great question, and I don't know, I don't read her mind, but my sense is what she's asking is something that I ask a lot as well. In terms of our business, what can't be replicated? Software can be replicated or quickly copied. Branding can be replicated. Think of how many knockoffs there are, right? It's easy to replicate almost any asset, office layout, branding, color schemes, etc. It's really hard to replicate really committed, dedicated people. And this is why, for me, as a people practitioner, that engagement score, that employee survey that you run once or twice a year, or maybe sometimes quarterly, it's really hard to replicate highly engaged employees. Engaged employees will work harder for less pay with discretionary effort and using their best efforts. Disengaged employees phone it in. They don't solve problems. They wait to be told. And they'll kind of, we call this in HR space, retiring in your chair. Yes, you're still showing up, but mentally you're retired. You're sitting in your chair waiting for the phone to ring. And engaged employees picking up that phone, they're making calls every hour of the day. And they escalate stuff wisely, like, we have a problem, I want to solve it right now, right now. Versus, oh, someone will get to it eventually, I suppose. The phone will ring and they'll say, like, Rich, we have this bug, can you fix it? Until then, I'm going to eat ice cream and watch daytime TV. Make sure your employees are engaged. And so the very next question is, how do I drive engagement? What are the things that really drive engagement? We can talk about that later, but I don't know if I've begun to answer your question, Selena.
Yes, Arnita, please guide us, but we have a follow-up question for you in this spirit. What marketing strategies can deepen relationships with employees, prospective hires, customers? You talked about so wisely using your real estate, in the employee and in your meeting context, but just even more externally facing, what marketing strategies become important?
I love this question. The most powerful thing I've ever seen in my career, and we're doing it at Nasdaq, and also, amazingly, one of the most affordable things. You guys ready for this? You're all sitting down? Use your employees with permission. So we take really high quality digital photos of people. We get them on camera saying why I enjoy my role or what this company's trying to do. And we get them on video with permission. We get written permission. I'm going to use Selena's face, quote, video. Again, engaged employees are happy to be brand ambassadors. They don't expect any extra money. They're like, this company growing is good for me and my role. I want to help us grow and be successful. So we found many employees happy to sign up. Diverse employees. Get white people, Asian people, brown people, black people, people from Asia, people from Europe, people from the US, North America, South America. Get a diverse bunch of people, all genders, and get them talking candidly about what they think, what they appreciate, what they enjoy, and put that thing on blast on LinkedIn, on your website. Nothing's more authentic than your own employees who are engaged saying what they love. No corporate marketing, no CEO quote will ever go as far as your own employees speaking to the world. And people in the world say, she has a lot in common with me. He has a lot in common with me. I would love to do what he or she is doing. That sounds really interesting. And it's authentic. You can't buy that. So other than the cost of like a LinkedIn license or your own website, this is free. It takes a couple little, people hours to get this done. And employees, frankly, get a kick out of seeing their face on the website. Like, I'm a brand ambassador for NASDAQ. Like, how cool is that? They call their mom, they call their dad. Guys, I'm on the website. And NASDAQ has this cool asset. We have a 5-story digital tower in Times Square. We put their faces 5 stories high on the billboard and we send them a photo framed. Like, how cool is that? Not everybody has that asset. But like, it builds pride, it builds engagement, and it builds authenticity with your potential customers and future hires. So I'm a big fan of like using your people, again, very clearly with permission. No like stealing people's photos and slapping them on billboards and they're shocked, right? That's not okay.
Oh, Rich, such rich information to share. So in this spirit, we've got a question from Katie around routines or rituals that you've seen to be helpful in building company culture and engagement with employees.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to make it personal and again authentic. So I have my own direct reports who report to me and my team, and then teams below me and teams around. One of my favorite things to do is begin every meeting, one-on-ones or team meetings, with a very short little ritual. We go around the room. I try to go last. Since the last time we met, and I'll do this with Selena, you can do it right now. Since the last time we met, what's one personal win and what's one professional win? Can you think of anything? It could be about your kids, your vacation, a project you delivered. Like, what's been a win since the last time we talked, which was last week, right?
Oh my goodness. Well, a personal win is we're in escrow on a house. And a professional win is that we had the opportunity to be in New York and DC and present new research and meet with incredible leaders driving innovation across states.
That's awesome. And when you begin a meeting like this, you're hearing everybody's different wins. You're winning, right? We'll get to the bad news later, but like right now we're winning. You begin the meeting with like a positive, and over time, people begin to trust. You actually want to know about my weekend. you actually care about my kids or my husband or my wife, my partner, my dog, like whatever it is that melts your butter and floats your boat, I want to hear about it. People begin to get to know each other, trust each other, and say, wow, Rich really cares about how I'm doing as a human being and also what's going on at work. Later in the meeting, we're going to get to obstacles and problems and customers who are unhappy. We're going to get there. But you can spend 5 minutes on like how people are doing. And Selena, you were perfect. Like boom, boom. It takes 30 seconds. If you have a meeting with 5 people, 2.5 minutes, you can afford it, right? But then you begin with like, we're all fully here. Another one that a colleague of mine uses, a scale of 1 to 10. How are you doing today? And if it's a 2 or a 3, you're like, oh, I got to hear that story. But keep it tight. Opening people up, getting them to be vulnerable. But when they're vulnerable, they build trust. And when they build trust, they build engagement. And the team has a stickiness and a cohesion and this kind of interoperability, which helps you go fast. You get to know each other and you get to go fast, which is important when you're a startup, right?
Wonderful. Okay, so in that spirit of going fast and connecting, we have a great question from Veronica. What have you found impactful in cultivating a psychologically safe environment to foster collaboration, especially in the startup phase when collaboration is so critical?
Yeah. Well, there's the more Machiavellian kind of like HR magic, which I'll share, and then more personal. The Machiavellian or more like overt external motivation is compensation. When people have shared goals and they'll get paid out on them like a bonus, they darn well work together. Like you guys are going to sink or swim together. And at Nasdaq, we do this a lot, not because we have a lot of resistance, but we want marketing and the people team to work together on something, or we need finance and IT to work together on something. And there's an executive compensation goal or a team goal around this, and we set goals regularly, right? So that's more like extrinsic motivation. You will get this reward if you deliver. Internally, again, I think it's about building trust. There's a quote from an American leader. I think she's a nun, and I'm going to get this quote wrong, and I've already forgotten her name. But the quote is something like, there's not a person in the world you can't fall in love with when you hear their story. So getting people to really open up, be vulnerable, and the leaders go first. Leaders go first. Share something you really screwed up one day. I thought this was a great idea, and it really went south, and I was embarrassed in public, and I just felt terrible. But here's what I learned, right? If the leader can share their screw ups, other people are like, oh, wow, I've screwed up too, but it was okay. I'm still alive to tell the tale. Over time, when you share more about like your family life and like the wins, the personal wins, I hear about kids' gymnastics, but also I let people know it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to fail. Let's try to fail early and fail often, as that saying goes. Like fail before it's super expensive. Get that version one out there in 2 weeks, not 2 years. And if it doesn't work, you haven't lost that much. But people collaborate when they trust each other. And to trust each other, they have to see the real human being, not the kind of robot face where everything is perfect every day and I'm an amazing person and I'm just Mary Poppins. I'm practically perfect in every way. Nobody is Mary Poppins, all right? It's a great movie, but it's not real life. So letting people feel the human nature of each other and be vulnerable with each other. And I'm a big fan of offsites for this, not every week, but like twice a year, having a small team do an offsite, even if it's like low cost. Go to the beach, bring hot dogs, bring marshmallows and chocolate, have a little cookout, and tell stories about like the craziest thing I've ever done or the time I really got in trouble as a kid. But like let people put their guards down.
Oh, that's perfect segue to Natasha's question, which were best practices for team retreats. And now I've got hot dogs and beach in my mind.
Right. I grew up in San Diego, so a lot of beach camping, right? For retreats, if you can get a really good facilitator, it may not even be somebody on your team. If you can afford it, I recommend a consultant or a contractor who just does this for a living and they're really good at icebreakers and getting people to open up. If you can't afford that, you may have a people team member. You may only have one. Often it's the HR guy or gal who's really good at this, or somebody on your team just a good facilitator. But it helps you when it's somebody outside the immediate team because they can ask the uncomfortable questions like, what are we not talking about that we should be? Or what's really looking like it might go off the rails in the next 6 months? Let's get that thing on the rails before it goes off the rails. It's hard for a member of the team. It would be hard if I was on the same team with Selena and Selena's like, Rich, I got to tell you, you're really screwing up this week. And I'm like, whoa, that's hard to hear from a colleague. Whereas a third party might say, hey, Rich, Selena, what do you think could be working better today? And then we both kind of like offer up ideas. So having that neutral third party is helpful if you can afford it. Anything that helps people in the beginning of the offsite kind of, again, kind of become human, share some personal stories. One of my favorites, again, free. Buy one of those kind of wall-sized post-it notes, the butcher block paper. It's called by some people, or just get big sheets of paper and tape them up on a wall. And it's called journey lines. Tell the story of your life in a line. And when things are going good, the line goes up. And when things are going bad, the line goes down. So I had a happy childhood. My parents told me how much they loved me. College was rough. I didn't get good grades. It was a hard transition. But then I fell in love and I met the person of my dreams and my line goes up. But then we got divorced and that was the worst time ever. Or I dealt with breast cancer because today's breast cancer awareness. Like, tell the journey of your story in a line, but keep it like short, like maybe 8 or 10 things, not like an autobiography. When people see each other's stories, they're like, wow, she's had a hard time and I've had a hard time. We've all had hard times, but now we're really human together. And then gradually move on to your business. What's working well in our business? What's not working well in our business? What do we hope to accomplish in the next 3 months, 6 months? What do I need everyone to be engaged in? But when you begin with that vulnerability, people are more willing to say things that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, or they think that maybe you wouldn't approve. My team says things that they think I might disagree with all the time because they know I'm not going to jump down their throat. I'm like, oh, that's something I wouldn't have thought. Like, can we talk about that more? That's really interesting. But that's because we have this trust. They know they're not getting fired. I'm not going to yell at them. I'm taking notes like, oh, Selena has an idea I never would have thought of, but that's kind of valuable. I wouldn't have thought of it, but she did. That's interesting. But you have to build that trust. You have to earn it. So these offsites are a way to earn trust and also just honestly have some fun. Go to a nice dinner if you can afford it. Give people little gifts, even if it's like a little tiny like bag of like Hershey's chocolate, like whatever. Like, but the more thoughtful, the better. Or even a handwritten card. Here's what I really appreciate about you. I've seen offsites where every member of the offsite writes that about each other. They get a little note card and they just write down like 3 words about Selena that I think are really awesome. And you don't see them till the end, and you bring them home and you read them later, and you're like, wow, people really think good things about me. All this stuff is almost free, you guys. Like, it's almost free, but it's
Oh,
bringing out the human in people.
and I'm going to stay with that thread, bring out the human within people. How do you, this is James's question, how do you keep employees motivated? And I would add, just especially when it's hard, when you're in that build mode, in that heads down mode.
My short answer is eyes on the prize. People will go through almost anything for some kind of big outcome. But where I see people who are not in HR often make a mistake is they think it's money. And let's be honest, for some people, money's a really big deal. It's a big motivator. But if you've ever gotten a big payout, like it's fun for a couple of days, and then you're like, okay, well, I got my reward, I'm moving on. Intrinsic motivation is much more long lasting and much deeper. And so I try to keep people motivated by getting them focused on a distant goal that's meaningful to them and to all of us. So my team is called People Experience, and everybody on my team, communications, diversity, equity, inclusion, leadership, talent development, et cetera, all of us are focused on an awesome people experience, and we all have our own kind of angle in contributing to that. But every year we have a small number of like big, audacious goals that everybody feeds into. And I know that they're on my team because they want to create this awesome employee experience. It's not Rich on a mountaintop saying, experience, experience. Every member of my team and their team and the teams below them, they're part of this mission, or they wouldn't be part of my team. I wouldn't have hired them. I screened for that. And so when things get tough, I'm like, I know this is a tough week, guys. That software totally backfired. We're going to have to like start fresh and reload all the data. It sucks. I'm with you. If we're working till midnight, I'll be working till midnight with you. But remember, later this year, we're going to be rolling out career maps for every employee in the company. Having a map of all the jobs in a company the size of 10,000 like Nasdaq, how cool for employees to see all the jobs at the company that they could have them. And what does that job work? So this is a tough week, but by the end of the year, we're going to have career maps, and we're all part of that. It's a very specific example to my team, but think about like what's going to intrinsically motivate people beyond a big payout. Payouts are nice too, but that won't keep you motivated for long. Or someone dangles something shinier and a little more valuable down the road, and they go chase after that money. because we could all of us be outbid by Google or Microsoft, right? So if it's all about the money, I'm a little bit worried about you.
This advice is so valuable, and we're seeing how you bake this sort of human thread, human motivation, the intrinsic motivation. So one topic we haven't touched on, again, in this human space is mentorship and networking and what role they
Yeah.
play in shaping culture.
I'm glad you raised that, Selena, because again, speaking of things that are really impactful but close to free, mentoring takes a few minutes, right? So at Nasdaq, we now have an executive goal that we want every executive in the company to mentor. Anybody can be a mentor, but we're actually paying executives a bonus if they sign up to mentor. And my goal is to build connections across the company. So I want mentors who are not your manager. And in Nasdaq, we have different business units, different divisions, right? You guys may be smaller, but I want people to mentor others who they may not encounter in their daily life. First of all, they're going to share their wisdom. But secondly, people who may not work together are going to build a relationship. But if 20 people in your company are building relationships with each other, one-on-one to start with, you're stitching that organization together. Even more important if you're remote. You may not have a lot of time with this person or that person because you work on a team that's very focused. But I want to get mentored by the head of marketing because I don't know much about marketing. Or I want to get time with somebody in finance because I don't know much about finance. And so we use Workday as our HR tool, but there's a lot of tools that you can match mentors to mentees. You can even do it by hand if you're small enough. But it's free. We give people a one-page tip sheet, just one page. You can get it off the internet of like best practices in mentoring, being a mentor, being a mentee. And we tell people 45 minutes once a month. Like this is not Mount Everest. It's not Mount Kilimanjaro, right? 45 minutes once a month for 12 months. And then if you want to rotate, please rotate. But we find over time, people stay connected to their mentor. It's a 1 year program that we run by the people team. But then, we're not going to stop people being friends. If Selena and I want to have coffee next week and we're not mentoring anymore, we can still go get a coffee. No one's going to tell us no. And so you're building, again, intimacy, connection, relationship, and trust. And the bigger your company gets, the harder that is. People get more siloed, more fragmented. And mentoring is a great way to give career development when you can't give raises, right? I can't promote you today, but I'm going to make you a great candidate for when a role opens up. When that role opens up and people are applying, you're going to be a stellar candidate. I can't guarantee you're going to get it, but you're going to be a great candidate. So I promise people about potential versus what I can give you today. And it gives them a little bit more of a longer term horizon. Younger employees often need a bit more of a longer horizon to understand that the payoff is not next week.
Well, we're so quickly running out of time here, and I've got a final question for you.
Okay.
We have the honor of working with the most incredible leaders and the most incredible entrepreneurs and visionary. All of you on this call today who've given so fully your time and engagement, thank you for being here. And in just recognizing leadership and the incredible leadership that comes from entrepreneurs who are truly building something that has never been done before and creating innovation for themselves, for their families, for their communities, and our world. How, from your perspective, how do you, working with incredible leaders yourself, what are the characteristics of great leaders, and how do you help leaders learn and grow?
I'll give you three, and they may be surprising. I think outstanding leaders are great listeners. People think they have to have all the answers. I'm like, actually, you're going to learn more by listening. So really focus on listening. Humility, because if you think you know everything, it's really hard to learn new things, right? Humility tells people, I don't have all the answers. What's in your head? So listening, humility, and empowerment. If you tell people, I bet you can solve this problem, or let's work together to solve this problem, what are your thoughts? You're training people that I want you to use your brain and that answers don't roll down from the top. Answers can come from anywhere in the organization, right? So listening, humility, empowerment. And no surprise, many of us have growth areas in those spaces. I sure do. And so the most powerful thing I've seen to help leaders is to create more self-awareness through a 360. It has to be done really carefully. Again, if you can hire a consultant to do this for you, to do it anonymously, either through an interview process or through an online tool, give people the unadulterated feedback of, let's take me as an example. Tell me about Rich. What's he doing really great today? What could Rich do better, tomorrow or next week? And what's one thing that would most make a difference in increasing Rich's effectiveness? Just those three questions. What's going great? What could be better? What's one thing Rich could focus on now to be better in the future? If you have this done by a third party or somebody neutral and can do it anonymously, give leaders feedback. They'll often be shocked. Our own self-concept does not always align very well with how we're being perceived. And the more senior you become, the more important it is to not have those shields up. You start to lose contact with the real world. We all need to get the truth, whether we're the president of the United States or whomever it may be. We need to hear sometimes the real deal, and a 360 can help you.
Thank you so much for this incredible wisdom. And I just want to take a moment to, honor all the experience you've brought today and recognize this is a piece of a much bigger conversation. And we look forward to welcoming you hopefully back to the center again really, really soon. So thank you, Rich. And thank you to
My
everyone, all our entrepreneurs. Thank you, Rich. And thank you to all our entrepreneurs for all your engagement here today. Again, we offer a series of classes and webinars. So we hope to see you again here soon. Thank you for joining us. Wonderful session. Rich, I've personally learned so much that I'm going to apply to my own job. So it's been truly a very special hour together. So thank you from all of us.
Thank you. And no surprise, I used to work at LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Anybody, feel free to connect, and I will do my best to be here for you.
Thank you so much.